Good morning. We've had some comments asking me to have a look at the new tier lists that have been published by Knee. So I thought I'd have a look at those for you guys in this video. Knee has given us two tier lists, one for death matches and one for tournament, which I think is interesting. It sort of suggests that in Tekken, the real world environment that you're playing in can actually matter more than how your character functions mechanically. It makes it more difficult to place your favorite character at like a specific spot in a tier list in terms of how strong it is, but it is probably the reality of how this game works. And so I want to look at both and see if there's anything we can learn from the differences between the two. We're going to look at the deathmatch one first. If you don't know what a deathmatch is, it's sort of characterized, the way we do it here in Asia is usually you sit down in the same arcade and you play one long set against one person until one of you either gets promoted or demoted. And so you're playing a very long set against the same person, which means that you end up exhausting all of your gimmicks and all of your patterns, and then a lot of the time it becomes a question, at least in my opinion, the most important part of a long deathmatch set then becomes, is your character able to apply effective 50-50 mix-ups? And the reason for that is, if you're establishing reads on one another, the game is getting more and more defensive, less and less crazy stuff is happening. If you can apply a 50-50 mix-up, it doesn't matter, because if your opponent is forced to guess and they guess wrong, then they're going to eat damage no matter what. So it's being able to sort of use a 50-50 mix-up as a can opener to get in on an opponent who is dealing with all of your other stuff kind of effectively. So in a long deathmatch environment, gimmicks become super weak. Strong mix-ups become super strong, in my opinion. So we're going to jump into this list right now, and I'm gonna be surprised if we see mix-up heavy characters at the top and we see gimmicky characters near the bottom. Okay, so at the bottom we've got the Bears, Gigas, Chloe, and Lars. These are considered by most people to be like the 4 weak characters in the game, and it's nice to see that Knee agrees. I think that there is actually a lot of potential locked away in the Bears and Gigas, and even to an extent Chloe. And I think if you like to play these characters, don't worry about the fact that they're down here. You could still potentially win a tournament with these characters. Tekken is balanced enough that that makes sense. The only character in the game who I feel is genuinely weak is Lars, and I would like make a D tier here for death matches and put Lars in it, because I don't think there's like any environment where he excels. He obviously can win games, and there are players like Only Practice who achieve like amazing things with him, but I think even like the good Lars mains that I know here in Japan agree that he is probably the weakest character in the game. I really think he is, and I think he deserves to be looked at by the developers because he is like a little bit standout weak in my opinion. If you look at the B tier, we've got Lee, Oscar, Lily, Josie, Eliza, Jack, Miguel, Claudio, Katarina, Akuma. This makes sense to me. The only like interesting thing here, I guess, is we've got Eliza and Akuma in this rank, and those characters are kind of difficult for me to analyze because I don't play Street Fighter and I don't play these characters. They function in a very unique way, and so for a player like me to place them here in a deathmatch environment sort of suggests that he thinks that they are kind of gimmicky, but definitely usable, but they don't have the mix-up potential or the the real sort of serious pressure to last all that long in a very long set. And I think that's interesting to note. We've also got Oscar, Lily, Claudio, sort of gimmicky characters down here. I think this makes sense. Jack is a character who, I mean, a lot of people get frustrated when he gets placed in lower ranks because they see him do so well in tournaments all the time, but trust me, he belongs down here. He's not a super strong character or anything. He just has very simple and effective tools that he can repeatedly abuse in a tournament environment, and that's why he excels there. But he does not have like insane mix-up potential or anything. And I think in a deathmatch, this is where he belongs. He's obviously a good character. I mean, he can achieve great results, same as any character in the tiers above him, but he does not deserve to be considered a high-tier character just because he happens to be overrepresented in tournaments lately. That's, I think, a misunderstanding of what kind of a character he is. And then if we look at the A tier, we've got basically, it's like the biggest tier with the most characters. We've got the Mishimas up here. We've got Elisa's interesting. You know, she's usually considered to be like lower mid, but here she's like upper mid. Yeah, this also makes sense. There's nothing like standout, no pattern to pick up on in this tier, and I wouldn't like change anything about it. Obviously, you know, Nii knows more about Tekken than I do, but I would personally place maybe Yoshimitsu in the B tier. I don't think he's super strong, and that would basically be it. This is another tier where I think you could actually split it into two, because I think while, you know, Elisa, Bob, you know, they're strong characters, they're not as strong as King or Eddie, or Brian or Horong, in my opinion. I think like you could make this two tiers, and in the upper one you would place characters like King, Brian, Horong, Steve and Jin, and then in the lower one maybe you would place characters like you know, Elisa and Bob. But yeah, that would be it basically. And then we go to the S tier, and yeah, this is kind of what I was saying about like mix-up potential. I think Xiaoyu, Leo, Dragunov, and Devil Jin are all characterized by their ability to create mix-up opportunities. Devil Jin has that Hell Sweep, which is basically an unseeable low launcher in this game. It is amazingly powerful, especially in a world where we have like, you know, rage arts and everything. I think it's crazy good. If I had to like make a choice of one character that was the strongest character in the game in a deathmatch environment, who stands above all the other characters, like the double S character, I would probably pick Devil Jin. It's between him and Xiaoyu, but I think Devil Jin might be, like, all things considered, the strongest, potentially strongest character in the entire game of Tekken 7. The only thing that's super weird about this entire list is that Nii has placed Kazumi in the top tier. And you know, most people consider her to be sort of lower mid, at least they did when the game came out for console. I did as well. I still don't think Kazumi is very good, but Nii obviously thinks that she's amazing because she places her up here, and so I would really like to see him break down this character and talk about why he thinks that. It would be really interesting to know. Because, like, okay, so she's got a counter hit 4, but it's got like a shitty hitbox, and if that was like a super good tool, then Katarina would be placed higher because her counter hit 4 is better. Shaheen's counter hit 4 is better. She struggles to apply good lows, but she has like that really good stature kick, down back 4, and she basically has to rely on that completely for her lows. It works, but it's not amazing or anything. I personally think her, like, if you look at Leo, Devil Jin, and Dragunov, you've got like amazing wall carry potential where you can carry across the whole stage and then you can apply a high damage wall combo. Kazumi, when she wants to do like a long distance wall carry, she has to end with her like Tiger Ender, and then when she does that, the only ender that she can get on the wall is a running 2, which does low damage, doesn't allow for great Oki. So yeah, it's super interesting to see her up here. And I think the one thing like I would want to know more about is why he decided to place her here, because everything else sort of makes logical sense, but to me Kazumi needs to be like not even in the A tier but in the B tier in my opinion. I think she's comparable to a character like Miguel, you know, poke heavy, a little bit counter hitty, but then Miguel has like better range and better damage, so yeah, I don't know. But and he has better lows, he has much better lows. So yeah, I would be very interesting to know about Kazumi, but the rest of it sort of makes sense and is kind of unsurprising. But now comes the more interesting part where we look at the tournament list and we try and contrast these two and see what we can learn from the comparison, right? So what's the tournament environment about? Well, it's about being nervous, it's about maybe struggling with your execution because of psychological factors. It's characterized by having short sets of only coupled matches against one person and not a long set like a death match. And so that's sort of the mindset I want you to be in when we jump in and look at this next list. Imagine you are playing Tekken in front of people who are judging you and you feel scared, but you really want to win. You can potentially win a lot of money if you do win. And yeah, so there's a lot more emotion that goes into the tournament environment. And so if we have a look at this list, the first interesting thing to note is that the C tier has not changed. It's completely unchanged, which basically means that Nii considers these 4 characters bad enough that they will be the weakest characters in the game, no matter in what environment you are playing them, which is interesting. And then we get to the B tier and things get a little bit crazy. This is the biggest tier in this list. Basically, what I think Nii is saying here is that there are 3 characters that are extremely good, a couple of characters that are good, and then there's everybody else. And so I don't think we need to like dive deep into the B tier here and start explaining it. It basically means that there's nothing that stands out about these characters in the tournament environment. They're just typical, you know, solid, and there's nothing special about them. And then the A and the S tier is where characters who have something that allows them to excel in tournament live. And so, yeah, it gets really interesting in the A tier because we've got Eliza, Asuka, Lily, Eddie. I mean, characters who are considered kind of like gimmicky and low tier a lot of the time, and they're placed really high here. And so we talked about, like, in the deathmatch environment, your gimmicks gradually get weaker, but your mix-ups gradually get stronger. In a tournament environment, not only are you playing much shorter sets, which means that it is much harder to establish reads, it's much harder to, you know, get reads on patterns. And if you're able to use some sort of very high-risk, high-reward kind of move to get a lot of damage on your opponent because you gambled on it, not only are you going to get a lot of damage, but it establishes a huge psychological advantage on your opponent because they're going to be frustrated, they're going to feel like, you know, they got hit by something gimmicky in front of a lot of people, and, you know, I think that's going to be a much larger factor. So we've got characters who are considered like cheap and who break the rules, like you know, Lily, Eliza, Xiaoyu, characters who, you know, who don't really play by the standard rules of Tekken. Eddie is the same thing, and I think that's really interesting. I think Jin sort of falls into that category as well. I think Jin is stupid strong. So yeah, this is super interesting stuff. Yeah, it's odd to see like Lily placed above Devil Jin in a tier list. But if this is specifically for a tournament environment, Nii, he places, you know, at the top of global tournaments all the time, so he knows more about this environment than you or I do. So yeah, it's super interesting to see, but it also sort of suggests that no matter what character you play, depending on who you're playing, when you're playing, what environment you're in, your character can either be super strong or super weak, and it's just going to depend on so many factors that it's difficult to say. Unless you're playing Kuma, Panda, Lars, Chloe, or Gigas. In that case, you know, are probably at a slight disadvantage, no matter what the situation, according to Nii's list, right? And then the S tier, again, Kazumi is at the top. I think it's really odd. But we've seen her do well in tournament. A lot of people, both in the West and in Asia, are using her in tournament, and they're achieving pretty cool results. And then Dragunov and Jack, right? I think Dragunov and Jack are very strong and overrepresented in the tournament environment, but I also think it's very interesting to note that the 2 main players that come to mind that routinely are able to beat Nii at these big tournaments are Saint with his Jack and JDCR with his Dragunov, right? And so it might be that Nii, when he makes this list, he's sort of considering his own experiences, and when he ends up at that really high tournament level where only a few players in the world are able to live, the characters that he runs into are these 3 characters, mainly Dragunov and Jack, right? Those are the 2 characters that he constantly has to struggle against at the top level in the tournament environment, and so it sort of makes sense from his subjective view to put them at the top of the tier list. Does that mean that this is like objective truth? I don't know, but you know, who am I to judge his tier list? It's probably much more accurate than anything I could make, but I would personally just demote Kazumi. I don't think she belongs up here. I don't think, even if she is strong in the tournament environment, she's not as strong as Dragunov or Jack. And I also think that Xiaoyu and Devil Jin deserve to be placed higher. The thing about Mishimas, and it's so interesting to see that they're all placed low here. I mean, I think, let's see here, Devil Jin, Kazuya, Heihachi, yeah, they're all placed in the B tier. They're very high execution characters, and so basically if you play them to their max potential, they're extremely strong, and Devil Jin, in my opinion, becomes the strongest character in the game. But when your palms are sweaty, and, you know, spaghetti and all the rest of it in the tournament, it's much more reliable to just do 4-4-1 with Jack, to just do running 2 with Dragunov, to just do running 2 and down for 1 and down back 4 with Kazumi. So I think it's interesting to note that we have extremely low execution thresholds on the top tier. All of those 3 characters are extremely easy to use, and you don't have to worry about messing up your inputs when you play them. When you want to do something with either of these characters, it's going to come out nicely, and you don't have to like worry about advanced strategies, because they have moves that are going to work in almost any case. Like doing a running 2 with Dragunov in this game is almost never a bad idea, like almost never a bad idea. So, and then like it leads to really favorable situations for him every single time, right? So yeah, I think it's interesting, but like I said, in the deathmatch environment, gimmicks are weak, mix-ups are strong, but it seems in the tournament environment, gimmicks can be very strong, but the strongest thing is having a simple but effective character who does not require a lot of advanced execution. That's what I'm going to take away from this. The other thing that I'm going to take away from it that I think we should pay some attention to, people might not be as interested in it as I am, because I like to play around with low tier characters. I think Lars needs to be looked at, because I think he's a little bit too weak. I think he is weaker than the other weak characters. They tried to give him a buff by giving him the new dynamic entry 3 when we went over to FR. That move ended up not being good, it didn't work, and now he's dog shit, more or less. So I think it would be cool if the developers considered actually, like, no joke, buffing Lars. That would make sense to me. But that's my little analysis. Let me know what you think. Let me know how you would change the tier list. Let me know if there's anything specific that you took away from it. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.